this is a really interesting topic in talking about data, right? And we've oftentimes thought about data just in terms of what we do on the farm. But the conversation and the topic is shifting to what we do with data off of the farm and the opportunities that are there for growers to, again, make use of that data. So to moderate that conversation and to get things started, I want to turn it over to Lauren Renchie, who has a deep background in all things agriculture, from growing up on a family farm in Iowa to working at a number of ag corporations and entities. So Lauren, welcome to the CFC and thanks for moderating. And I'm looking forward to hearing the panel.
Thanks, Ryan. That's a high bar that you've set.
That's the goal.
As many of you know who are on the line right now, sustainable farm practices and the data related to them are opening a multi-billion-dollar market, and farmers stand to benefit. So in this panel, we're going to explore how sustainable farm practice information is used to unlock profitability opportunities. And this may show up in the form of carbon credit payments, premiums on sustainably sourced grains, agronomic cost-saving benefits, and more. And today we've got a panel of experts in the room who are thinking about just that. They are thinking about how do farmers and the agricultural industry stand to make the most from these emerging or emerged sustainability markets, and why data is a cornerstone of this opportunity. So like Ryan said, my name is Lauren Renchie, and I've been at Indigo now going on 4 years, and my whole career, my whole life has been spent in agriculture. My family farms corn, soybeans, and wheat in Northeast Iowa, and we have tested all of Indigo's sustainability solutions at some point over the years. And over that time, I've been able to develop a unique perspective on the application of ag technology in the field, pun intended. So, and today I've got with me some distinguished guests. We've got Chris Brown, who is the Director of Quant here at Indigo Ag. We've got Max Feinberg, who's the Chief Technology Officer at Verdova, and Jenny Sung, who is a soil biogeochemist by training, and she is the Carbon and Ecosystem Services Program Lead at Corteva Agriscience. So panelists, if you'll also please give us a quick elevator pitch on who you are and what you do, I'll ask Chris to go first.
Hi all, great to be with you today. Like Lauren said, my name is Chris Brown. I lead our quantification product team at Indigo. It's my privilege to work cross-functionally with scientists, data scientists, software engineers, agronomy experts, all in the vein of focused on developing our capabilities and software, which generate the environmental impact, which we then look to monetize on your behalf. In short, I like to refer to our team as responsible for scaling science at Indigo. Thanks.
Big shoes to fill. Thanks, Chris. Max, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks, Lauren. Hey, everybody. My name is Max Feinberg, and I'm CTO and co-founder at Verdova. I saw someone in the comments saying there weren't a lot of Illinois people up there. So yeah, I'm from Northern Illinois, and I also studied at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign. My background was not originally from ag. I started off as a roboticist, and I've kind of shifted to doing more sort of like geospatial data science work. And to talk a little bit about Verdova, we're a grower-first ag data company. We were founded in part by growers. And what we do is we connect to an operations farm management information system, extract the data, clean it, impute it, and we put it into a variety of data products that we sell across the food value chain, all while returning 85% of the value back to farmers. In the first panel, a lot of people, Adam, Keane, Greg, we're all talking about how it's difficult to get data into Indigo to sort of start with. We sort of help make that easier.
Thanks, Max. And last but certainly not least, Jenny, will you give us an introduction?
Yeah, thanks, Lauren. Yeah, so I'm Jenny Sung. I'm a soil ecologist and biogeochemist, and I'm from Fort Collins, Colorado. I've spent all of my career as a soil carbon scientist, and I've been working at Corteva now for about 2 years on our Corteva Carbon Initiative, which is powered by Indigo and rewards farmers for the positive environmental outcomes associated with the adoption of sustainable farming practices. Thanks for having me here.
Thanks, Jenny. All right, those were good intros, and we've got some good questions gathered today for that have been sourced from farmers and industry folks and policymakers, and I'm going to lead you through all of them. And for those of you on the line, if you have questions along the way, please be sure to drop them into the Q&A feature at the bottom of the Zoom window, and we'll try and hit on as many of them as we can. So we're not going to waste any more time. We'll go ahead and get started. And without further ado, Jenny, the first question is for you. Jenny, what determines if a practice is called sustainable, agronomically, economically, however you want to define it?
Yeah, I would say agronomic sustainability includes farm management practices that build longevity and resiliency into a farm's operation. So I think of things like keeping the soil covered to prevent the erosion of that nutrient-rich topsoil, rotating crops to reduce pest pressure, and building soil organic matter that builds soil structure and helps with water infiltration, and making farms more resilient against some of the most devastating impacts of droughts or floods. But of course, a farm is a business, so none of those agronomically sustainable practices would really make any sense if they're not also financially sustainable, right? So for economic sustainability, I think we need to think about yield, both for crops, but also for carbon credits, and the price signals for what's being produced and sold from the farm as financial profits, but also the cost of inputs and fuel put into farm operations and how those might cut into a farm's bottom line, and how all those things kind of trade off over time.
Yeah, that completely makes sense. And I want to continue on this trend of making sure we're all on the same page when we talk about the word sustainability. So my next question is for Chris. So when we talk about collecting sustainability or sustainable farm data, what kind of data are we talking about?
Great question, Lauren. And it really is, it's the farm data, farm management data that sets the baseline here. And then how sustainability comes into it is touching on, building on what Jenny said. It's how you are maintaining sustainable practices or making changes relative to how things have been managed in the past. But really importantly about the farm management data is that it's field level management information. And why is that the case? As you know better than I, understanding the interactions between your crop rotation, your N rate, your soil type, the weather, everything is fundamentally critical to the success you're going to have on your farm. And the same goes for the accuracy of the quantification models that we're going to run to help quantify that sustainability benefit. So it's important for us to understand the full spectrum of farm management information so that we can best represent the reality of the ecosystem and the complex dynamics that are happening in your soil, and so that we can accurately quantify the impact you're having on the environment, and do that in a way that enables the best monetization opportunity of that data. Ultimately, we think quality wins the day, and high quality data is where we have to start for that.
Yeah, completely. And I also think that you touched on something really important that I want to come to later in this panel, which is not only is the sustainability data valuable for the organizations that ask for it to be able to monetize some of these practices and return those profits to the farmers, but also baseline collecting that data is valuable to the farmers themselves. So I'll be sure to ask a question on that in a little bit. But my next question for the panel is for Max. And Max, this is a triple header, so I can come back to any element of this question that you would like, but the three-part question is, what is the data market opportunity you see for farmers? Who's driving it? And when thinking about marketable data, what qualities should farmers keep in mind?
Yeah, so the data market opportunity for farmers, and just to talk as clearly as possible, the opportunities for growers to capture more value from their data, either by directly selling the data or packaging with the commodity itself, is definitely an emerging market. We see it growing all the time. In terms of what we see at the sort of tip of that spear, I would say that really comes from everything in the carbon credit and environmental credit ecosystem, including the work that Indigo does here. And what we sort of see is, just a little bit beyond that, is that source plus market type opportunity that, Liz and Ron talked about earlier, where, by packaging the data with the commodity, so with your corn, with your soybeans, with your wheat or cotton, at point of sale, that is then able to be sold at a premium to a variety of different types of buyers, right? So you can think, sustainably grown cake mix, low carbon fuels, or making sure that your new North Face or Patagonia or whatnot has, the cleanest cotton that you can get. When we think about, what really makes the data valuable, the most key thing really is consistency. A lot of the work that we do at Verdova is to prepare the data to make it so that when you get to, sustainability or any ecosystem program, or a buyer is trying to validate that the, product that they're getting was grown sustainably, we need to have that complete history. And, we do a lot of work to sort of impute things that are missing. So if there was a tillage pass that was missed, or, there was a nitrogen application that was, not adding up, even though we know, the average, or, the general take, the crop plan that you have for your fields, we're able to go in and fill those things in. But if there are just too many holes, it can be really difficult to do that. So really just making sure that something is recorded, and relying on data partners or other people to hopefully carry the rest of that.
Yeah, thanks, Max. And that's a perfect segue into the next question I have for Jenny, because you're talking about filling in data where something maybe is not adding up, or being opportunistic and being able to pre-collect that data for farmers to help them out and ease this process. And on that point, Jenny, how does farm data provide or prove that a sustainable practice occurred in the first place? And by that, I mean like capital P prove, because anybody can scribble down a few numbers and dates in the back of a scale ticket, but what is the proof needed to actually make this data valuable?
Yeah, it's a good question. And there are various ways to prove that a sustainable practice occurred, and different programs will have different levels of requirements for proof. The best way is for a farmer to attest to it, but in some cases, farmers might not be interested in entering all of their farm management data, their farm management events into a platform to measure their sustainability impacts, especially.
I don't know what you mean.
Data entry, yeah, everyone loves it. Especially when the financial return is delayed, or sometimes the full value is unknown. And so that's kind of where digital records, like data pulled off of machines or associated with digital product purchase records, or in some cases remote sensing or even soil sampling, can help to fill in the data that's needed to prove that sustainable practices are occurring. And these digital records can also be used to verify practices are occurring by potential outside auditors, if that comes around.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And I want to use that to talk about, I want to use that to segue into the topic of traceability, because understanding not only that this information, this practice occurred and the information was collected, there's also an element of traceability that needs to occur to add value to this scenario. So Chris, what does traceability really mean, and why is it important in a sustainable crop program?
Yeah, great question. And I think it comes back to, I'd like to build on what Jenny and Max have both said, and that there's an element of capital P proving that happens here that's really important for all of the stakeholders in the equation, right? So what's being monetized is the impact that you're driving on your fields through your management practices. So we want to make sure we have traceability to your data, your management data, so that you're getting appropriately rewarded for the outcomes that you're driving. And that's just one stakeholder here. We also have the stakeholders on the other side of the folks of the equation, of the folks that are paying for, or who are the other side of the monetization of the environmental impact, whether they're buying the offset or buying the grain. They want to understand, was it part of their supply chain? Was it something that they can trust that it came as a part of a process that had high rigor and took account for the nuances of that region and the soil and weather that happened that year? So there's an element of building trust with the folks who are buying, that they understand where the impact came from. And then there's the element of making sure that the program is rigorous and fair and accounting for all of the impact that you are driving in your fields.
Makes total sense. And I want to come back to the point on trust. So we know that there's trust needed and backup proof needed and traceability needed to make this information and therefore these sustainable digital products valuable. And then on the farmer's side, obviously data is valuable. That's the point of our discussion. And so I'm curious to know your answer for what should farmers keep in mind when it comes to sustainability programs and keeping their data safe and with trusted partners.
Yeah, of course. We take that question super seriously. Table stakes, it's most important to know how Indigo's using the data. And that comes down to the programs that you're enrolled in and the benefits you're receiving from those programs, like Carbon by Indigo, data being used to quantify the carbon credits that are generated in the program and then allocated back to the field. We have a backbone. I mean, it's not just us who are keeping ourselves accountable. We use third-party verifiers to make sure that we are upholding the best practices in the industry. So we are, Carbon by Indigo has been certified by Ag Data Transparent as an example, to make sure that we are staying abreast with how ag data should be managed and treated, and making sure we have all the safeguards in place to uphold that trust. So it's not just us, but third parties that are making sure we are upholding a high standard. And lastly, there are opportunities for data and research, but Indigo would never share, and I believe this is, Indigo would never share your data with another organization without grower consent. So that's a part of that third-party certification as well. It's, Indigo making sure that we are doing right by our customers and making sure that we uphold your trust.
Yeah, completely. That's a theme that seems to be woven through everything in this data market that makes these digital products valuable. Proof, trust, traceability, going back and being able to use third party to verify and provide data seems to be a key part of the backbone of this industry. So not surprised to hear that that's also important in safeguarding growers end of the bargain on this as well. My next question is a little bit of a pivot, and I want to ask about business habits and try and make this actionable for farmers who are listening to this panel and want to take something away for what they can start doing now. So Max, I'm going to turn over to you and ask what business habits farmers should build up to maximize their profitability opportunity from this data market now, 6 months from now, over the next decade. Where do you think farmers' heads should be at?
Yeah. So, I feel like the sort of like first step to make sure that, you're making the best decisions to capitalize on data moving forward is, making sure that you're really consistently using, a farm management information system and making sure the data is in there all the time. And there's lots of little things that happen. I realize, when you're in a cab, there's a lot of other things going on. Maybe you're not the most careful about, the varieties or hybrids that you're choosing in a drop-down menu, or remembering to trigger things, or, making sure that you have good guidance lines everywhere. But the more that you do that now and set the good habits, the easier it is sort of looking forward to make sure that you have the past history of data that allows you to take on opportunities like Indigo, or, a number of other, opportunities that, Verdova helps to fulfill as well. And I would say that the second component beyond consistency is really, trying to have a, going beyond the traditional relationships that have governed a lot of transactions in ag, trying to look at the actual data and making decisions based on that. I remember before we started working with Indigo, this would have been sort of early to mid 2021, it was really common for me to go out and talk with the grower, and almost everyone had heard something about carbon. Maybe Indigo had called on them, maybe not, but everyone had very sort of like negative sentiment, leaning negative, or they very much had this sort of wait and see kind of mindset where they're like, this really is the Wild West. I'm going to wait for things to settle before I make a decision. And what we've really seen just in the last 9 to 12 months is how much that has shifted. Because, in sort of our partnership with Indigo, the big thing that we're supporting and sort of the new areas that we see data expanding is changing how growers make buying decisions by presenting things in a more objective fashion, right? So instead of going into a meeting just thinking like, oh, this is carbon credits, I have to make these changes, I have to reduce tillage or plant cover crops, being able to say like, oh, based on all of this record of data that you have, we're able to establish a set baseline. And from that baseline, we can't guarantee that this is what you're going to see, but if you no-till or reduce your tillage on these fields, or begin planting cover crops after this rotation, giving people an idea of what the opportunity actually is, that has really changed the conversation. And I would really say, there are so many new technologies that are coming up in ag, in artificial intelligence, and all of these different areas. And, just be open to trying them out and seeing if there is an opportunity there before you make any judgments.
Yep, makes total sense. I've heard time and time again that fuzzy numbers can be such a detriment to farming. It's true on our farm, and I know it's easier said than done, but having that baseline is so important to making critical farm decisions for your business. And with that, I want to ask the same question to Jenny and Chris, if you have anything to add on, are there any habits that you think farmers should build up to collect the type and quality of data needed for capturing these sorts of profitability opportunities in sustainability markets?
Yeah, Lauren, this is something that we're dealing with right now in the Corteva Carbon Initiative. We just grew our program a ton, and we're now collecting all of the data from farmers to generate carbon credits. And we found that the farmers who are already participating, already using the granular insights farm management software to collect their management information, already have the records from not just this year's, this past year's activities, but also the past several years of activities are the ones that are speeding through the process. The ones that don't have those digital records haven't been collected, engaging with our granular insight software, are having, a harder time collecting all the records needed. So I would say for folks on the line who have not, enrolled in a carbon program yet, or, haven't converted to reduced tillage, no tillage, cover cropping, some of these practices, but are interested in the future, like go ahead and start, engaging with some farm management software system now to start collecting the records, because you're going to have to go back and to input those baseline or those business as usual historical records as well. Chris, I don't know if you want to add to that, but
yeah, it's and the other thing, so building on that, doesn't hurt to increase records and burden of proof. I mean, the capital P prove is a good thing to come back to, and that comes back and how does that tie in here? And it comes back to quality, right? If you can show the before and after, we've all seen the infomercials on TV, if we can show the before and after, that tells the story that this was a change that you drove and you opted to drive, and that ultimately leads to Carbon by Indigo being further and further positioned as best in class impact generation capability. Same with other market plus source opportunities to prove what we're doing is real and the impact that you're having is real. The last feature plug that I would have for you is that in our data collection platforms, real-time data collection is both easy and available and counts as evidence. So the more that you can pick up that habit or build that habit of documenting in real time, the easier this is going to become over the long run.
Yeah, thanks all three of you. We have 1 minute left, and I have one question, and I'm going to pose it to Jenny, so no pressure. But on this same train of thought, and it also alludes to something Ryan Brady said in Chip's panel, and what we talked about early on in this panel, is that this data is obviously valuable to farmers on their own operations to make decisions as well. So if you had to say how can farmers use their own data collected for sustainability markets to understand what practices are most effective and profitable for them? What would you have to say, Jenny?
Yeah, I mean, I think the more that we track our activities and how they affect our bottom line or our overall health or well-being, the better in tune we are to what's working and what's not. You know, I think about that with all of like the tracking of my steps on my, or the use of my screen time every week, the summaries on my cell phone, and, you know, just seeing that data sparks a little like competitive edge in me, or, you know, to do better and improve my own health, like whether compared to myself, or you can like do it against friends and family. And, you know, I don't think I would have that same motivation or push to kind of improve my practices if that data wasn't being collected and monitored over time. And so I think the data collected for these sustainability markets that are tracking soil carbon or soil health outcomes can, you know, not only be used to bring extra revenue to the farm for those sustainable outcomes, but can also hopefully be used by farmers, as folks have spoken about earlier today, to track their own progress and to better analyze, you know, what practices are working for them or not over time.
Yeah, and in my experience, the biggest hurdle is just getting started, because just like tracking your steps or seeing your screen time, those are automatic reports. Tracking, you know, there's always going to be a little fiddling you have to do with collecting that data over time, but just getting started is the big step. And then after that, it should be a bit of smoother sailing. So it's totally worth it seeing it on my own farm. So with that, we are out of time. Thank you, Jenny, Max, Chris. It was so great to have you here today. And thanks for taking the time to share your expertise with us.